Hey, so you know how in Destiny Titans are generally thought of as the heavy frontline tank class? Well, throw that idea right out of your pretty little head because today we're going to find out just exactly how thick warlocks can be in Season of the Lost. I'm going to show you a really fun build I've been tinkering around with for the past few days. While you can use it in PvE, it is primarily a build for trolling people in PvP. The goal we're aiming for here is to take advantage of multiple in-game abilities that give you DR, aka incoming damage reduction. We're going to sprinkle just a little bit of health regeneration on top of that, and the end result is a beefy warlock who can be really annoying for other people to deal with. Now, you won't flat out become invincible to incoming damage or anything like that. You still gotta be careful. But as long as your positioning and your weapon shooting is on point, you can stay alive for way longer than you should, and you can confidently, borderline irritatingly, challenge people to 1v1 duels with ease. But before we get going, I want to give a shout out to the sponsor of today's video, Ridge Wallets. These things are beautiful, and I'm glad to promote them on my channel because I've actually been using one myself for about the past year. No joke, this right here has been my actual wallet. A lot of guys I know are still lugging around wallets like this. Big, bulky, floppy, and uncomfortable, doesn't sit well in your pocket, and you gotta move it around when you sit down. As I mentioned, over a year of the Ridge wallet, and I'm just never going back. It's light, sleek, and efficient. It doesn't fold or bulge out awkwardly in your pocket. It's got room for all my cards and a clip for bills when I am carrying cash. They've got over 30 colors and styles on their website, including carbon fiber and burnt titanium. Sounds like a Destiny shader. They've got 30,000 5-star reviews, one of them being mine, and each wallet comes with a lifetime warranty. Yes, you can buy just one wallet and boom, carry and use it for life. The Ridge is so confident you'll like it that they'll let you test drive it for 45 days, and if you don't, you can send it back for a full refund. Get 10% off today with free worldwide shipping and returns by going to ridge.com/falloutplays and use promo code falloutplays. Link to their site in the video description, and thank you again to Ridge for sponsoring today's video. Alright, let's get into the build and the numbers. I mentioned taking advantage of damage resist abilities. The first one we're going to look at is a classic, Whisper of Chains, a stasis fragment that any class can use. As long as you're standing relatively near a glacier grenade, you take about 25% less incoming damage than normal, and that's going to keep up until there are no more ice crystals around you, and then you lose that incoming DR buff. The second factor is from the exotic helmet, the Stag, which many of you know in Season 15 gives you an extra DR buff if you're standing in a Warlock Rift. Very popular exotic helmet right now. The damage reduction factor from the Stag isn't as strong as Whisper of Chains. It's somewhere between 14 and 15%. Not quite as whopping as 25%, but the two abilities do stack with each other. Allow me to demonstrate. Here we are in a private match showing off numbers. Now normally my bow does 101 damage per arrow in the body, but when my friend takes advantage of Whisper of Chains by being near a glacier nade and standing in a Warlock Rift with the Stag, the damage per arrow plummets down to 65, an overall reduction of about 35%. That, my friends, is nothing to sneeze at. It's not going to make you strong enough to tank things like a sniper headshot or a chaperone tap to the noggin, but if you spend a fair amount of time in PvP practicing with the build, you'll notice you might live through a lot of things that you normally wouldn't. I've had people shotgun me, then turn away, fully expecting me to have died, and I've even lived through things like the charge-up laser beam of a Devil's Ruin. Now, although Stag and Chains are the biggest two factors of the Tanklock build, there are plenty of extra tiny little adjustments we can make here and there to make the build more effective. First up, and this should probably go without saying, 100 recovery and 100 discipline. Having a high recovery, naturally, is always good, but with 100 recovery, we get the best possible cooldown on our Warlock Rift, and with 100 discipline, we get the best possible cooldown on our Glacier Grenade. On top of that, we want to pile on the following: the Grenade Kickstart Armor mod on your gauntlets. Kinda pricey, you gotta drop 4 energy. Believe me though, the juice will be worth the squeeze. Every time we fully expend our grenade energy, i.e. every time we chuck out a glacier nade, we gain more grenade energy. Essentially, we're just making our nade cooldown time even better. Keeping the armor mod train going, we got Utility Kickstart, which if you didn't know, one of the best armor mods in the game right now. It's nearly identical to Grenade Kickstart. Every time we fully expend our class ability energy, i.e. every time we drop a rift, rift, we get a bunch of rift energy right back. The reason why utility kickstart is so damn good is that it only costs 1 energy, meaning we can and should double down with 2 of them on our class armor. Moving on, let's talk about what fragments you might want to have turned on. We've already gone over Whisper of Chains, which is key for the extra DR factor that it gives you. Next, we have on Whisper of Torment. Every time you take incoming damage, you get extra grenade energy. Would kind of be dumb to not turn that on. We're trying to make sure that we can throw out our Glacier Nade as frequently as we can, so getting extra free energy just for taking damage is kind of a no-brainer. You won't always notice Whisper of Torment working, but it'll always be there for you in the background during a game. Next up, we got Whisper of Shards. Every time you shatter a crystal, you temporarily boost your grenade recharge rate. You get an extra 10 resil on top of that, which is kinda icing on the cake, but our main takeaway from Shards is the extra nade recharge rate. Here's the deal with that. Yeah, you want to leave your Glacier Nade on the battlefield in order to reap the damage reduction from Whisper of Chains. But again, we want to make sure we're getting a quick charge on our next Glacier Nade as well. Because the Glacier Nade generates multiple crystals, you can throw it on a wall, ceiling, whatever, and then if you have time, immediately shoot and break one. You can do that either before or after you start turning the enemy team into Swiss cheese, depending on what is going on in that exact moment. Either way, you still get to take advantage of the damage reduction by being near the other remaining crystals that you didn't break, while at the same time, shooting and breaking 1 or even 2 at any given time is going to help you get your next nade charge quicker. For my last fragment, I threw on Whisper of Fissures. Not nearly as crucial to the build as the other 3 fragments. Basically, if anyone gets too close to a Glacier Nade of yours, you can shoot it in front of them and get a little more damage. If you wanted to, you could also throw on Whisper of Conduction, even if you aren't playing with another teammate rocking Stasis. The extra 10 resil and 10 intellect for free is pretty big. Weapon-wise, technically, you can use whatever weapon your little heart desires. If there's one weapon that you feel really deadly with, I'm sure it'll fit in fine with the Tanklock build. However, because the entire theme of this here build is to be really meaty and tanky, I leaned into that by putting on Crimson. For all you new lightish players out there, Crimson is an exotic hand cannon that heals the wielder on a kill each and every time. Now, even though I'm a really big lover of Ace, Thorn, and especially Palindrome, Crimson is heavily underappreciated, and it fits the build well. The other team is already going to have a difficult time bringing you down in PvP because you're going to be constantly taking advantage of 2 different methods of DR, standing near your Glacier Nade to proc Whisper of Chains, and standing in your Stag Healing Rift. But adding immediate health regen on top of all that DR can be borderline cruel. I had plenty of moments when testing out this build where I almost felt like a flat-out bully to groups of enemy guardians, meaning of course that the build works great. Now, it's kind of important that I share with you what I'll call the order of operations of this build right here, meaning how exactly the flow of combat should go. What DR ability do I do first? How do I approach the enemy? And so on and so forth. My first instinct when originally using the Tanklock was to immediately drop the Stag Rift wherever I wanted to draw a line in the sand, but quickly learned that is not the way. Almost 100% of the time, I now open up nearly every engagement with the Glacier Grenade, and that would be for 2 reasons. Reason number 1 is that if you remember from earlier, Whisper of Chains provides the stronger DR buff at 25%. More importantly though, reason number 2, the Glacier Nade is far more flexible than the Stag Rift. While damn vital to the build, the Stag Rift is really limiting in terms of where you can go and what you can do. Once that rift is on the ground, you're only getting that benefit if you're standing right there. On the other hand, Whisper of Chains has great range. As long as you're near-ish to your Glacier Nade, you're getting that DR, so you have a bit more room to run around. Not to mention, the Glacier Nade is a projectile, so if the enemy guardians are a long ways away from you, you can use the Glacier Nade to immediately close the gap. Throw it between you and the enemy guardians and use it as cover as you roll up next to it to activate your DR buff. Your enemy now has to either reposition, shoot and break your Glacier Nade, which takes a lot of shooting, by the way, or just suck it up and deal with it. Either way, opening with the Glacier Nade is 100% the play, and you can get creative. Throw it on the floor between you and them, or throw it on the wall as you approach a corner. Throw it above a doorway even, somewhere out of sight, so maybe the enemy team doesn't even know you're getting the DR buff because they can't see the nade. Now that you've opened up with the Glacier Nade, if you want to, you can double down and drop that rift. As we've gone over, you got to be very careful in terms of where exactly you drop that rift. The good news is that if you've already got the Glacier Nade giving you extra DR, you could get a little ballsy and drop that rift right out in the open. Or if you want to be a little bit more careful, drop the rift as soon as you can to cover. Even though the majority of the rift will be behind cover, a good portion of it will stick out in the open, meaning you can still be standing half in the rift if you decide to pop out into the lane and start shooting. Just remember that before your Glacier Nade goes away, you want to shoot at least one crystal to make sure you're proccing Whisper of Shards and triggering that extra nade regen energy. If you want a TLDR of my order of operations with the build, here you go. Locate enemy guardians, chuck Glacier Grenade in strategic location, immediately break one crystal from cover to trigger Whisper of Shards, get near the remaining crystals to take advantage of Whisper of Chains, and when you've done all that, you can either A, decide if you need the extra protection from the stag, and if so, drop it, or B, just start unleashing hell onto the enemy. You gotta play the Rift by ear a lot of the time, but the good news is that between 100 recovery and double utility kickstart mod, you can drop the Rift even if you don't really need it, because you're gonna be getting it back really quickly. And there you go, that's really the build in a nutshell. Now, of course, you should also put on all the other usual armor mods that are generally top tier. Weapon targeting mods, weapon unflinching mods, scavenger and or holster mods, the whole thing. Might take a little bit of practice in terms of figuring out where to throw your Glacier Nade and where to drop your Rift, but once you get into the rhythm of it all, you'll be farming hate mail in no time. If you've got any recommendations or adjustments that you think would go well with the Tanklock, I would love for you to share them with me down in the comment section. Also, if you've got any other build ideas you'd like me to tinker with, let me know. I'm always down for effing around with new ideas. Hit the like button if you enjoyed today's video, and remember to click subscribe for more content. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.